Hello and welcome everyone to our monthly podcast at Acumen, your one stop for everything into aviation. Today we have with us Martin Corcoran, who is our VP of Business Development based out of Dublin office. He comes with a massive experience of 31 years into aviation, and I'm pretty sure today's conversation with Martin would be really insightful for every one of you. So let's begin and have a very quick introduction from the man himself.
Thank you, Brewer. Very nice to be here, and I appreciate the time you've offered me to say hello to you all.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. In the aviation industry since 1990, prior to that, a separate career in the Defence Forces in Ireland, and I joined Aer Lingus in 1990, primarily in the technical side, workshops, APUs, and landing gears.
Nice.
Stayed a number of years there on the floor, learning the ins and outs of the aircraft technical side of the house. And in 1995 moved into the sales and commercial department. Aer Lingus then would have been a fairly young fledgling MRO provider, and we would have provided services to other airlines and different other MROs and OEMs as well. Stayed in the commercial department when the company was then taken over by FLS Aerospace, which was a Danish MRO, much larger in size, based in obviously Denmark and UK, and stayed again in the commercial department, moving into SR Techniques about 8 years later. It was based out of Switzerland, and they took over the company at that point and continued to grow the business, and at that occasion moving more into the engine side of the house. It's been a long career with them until 2015, and in 2015 I had a fantastic opportunity to join Acumen Aviation. I took up that opportunity, and I'm in Acumen Aviation since the present day. So an interesting career to date, very diverse, and quite a lot of travel.
That is amazing to hear, and of course we are happy as well that you are with us. So we absolutely understand that you have been associated with a lot of companies, first of all, and there have been a lot of acquisitions throughout your career time span. You have been into MRO industry for quite a while, of course with other industries as well. What we understand, right, and when I say we, it's my audience, right? So when we understand, there's a lot of documentation process in this industry, right? A lot of paperwork. It's very heavy on operations, right? For everything you touch on the aircraft, you need a document.
Correct.
So what I want to understand from your 30 years of experiences, when you started, where was this kind of operations, right? How much was paperwork? And today, has it evolved in terms of technology, in terms of, let's say, mindset, let's say, some regulation from the authority? So how have we come along these 30 years?
That's a very good question, and it is an interesting journey over the 31 years. It was definitely very much paper dependent 30 years ago, without a shadow of a doubt. Everything was documented on paper, and also very importantly was the manuals for the aircraft were also further paper document, and you have a library, a full-time library to back up all of the amendments to the manuals, which, as you know, came out every couple of weeks or months, as the case may be. So it was very much a paper-driven industry back then. There was a slow move to a kind of a barcode type approach, and this digitization of scanning of records, digital signatures came into the equation at one stage as well. This went along rather slow because you're dealing with ultimately you're dealing with the regulatory authorities. EASA are formed in Europe, as you know, but the aircraft became more and more owned by leasing companies. And while an airline would own an aircraft and could pretty much carry on themselves in their own repairs and maintenance procedures, when it was a leased aircraft, it was critical that the leasing company had a set of paperwork they could easily transfer to the next lessee. In the beginning, I suppose leases were 12 to 15 years old, or long, a duration I should say, but that became less and less. So if you have a lease of 3 to 5 years, it's critical your paperwork is kept up to date, and your digitization of those records are kept up to date. As we know, jurisdictions are changing as well in relation to getting your access to this paperwork or your records that must be set. That has moved along now quite nicely. The regulatory authorities are accepting more digitized paperwork, and the aircraft themselves have obviously evolved into more of a digital age aircraft with software upgrades provided by by the OEM, it must be said. So that's where the whole area transitioned from. I think today it's still quite a lot of paperwork, but there's a massive move on the environmental side of the house to move this into a more digitized format.
God. So yeah, of course, what I understand from every point that you said is it's more about the authority perspective, right? And less about the leasing companies and the OEMs, right? They are ready with the technology. It's more about what I perceive is it's more about the authority giving them a green signal. Okay, let's do everything digital. So, what scope even further? What scope do you see in terms of adoption of technology, in terms of approaching the authorities and trying to convince them to move 100% digital? Is that a possibility? First question, and maybe a follow-up question. If that happens, right, where do you see ourselves in terms of digital adoption, in terms of softwares coming up? Where do we see ourselves 10 years down the line?
That's a good second question. So the regulatory authorities are certainly driving the requirements, as you know, for the paperwork side. It still has to be an ink, 30 fingerprint type of signature, which is very important for all of the record, all of the transactions carried out on the aircraft in relation to repairs. The leasing companies would love to move, I think, ultimately to a digital solution because it gives them much more speedily access to their assets. If there was any situation of grounding or trying to repossess the asset or transfer it in a fairly quick fashion. At the moment, it's a 30 to 90 day process to review all the records, collate them correctly, and make sure they're in a presentable format to the next lessee. And to the second part of your question, 10 years down the road, will be all digital because the new aircraft are coming out with zero paperwork. It's very much a digitization of the manuals, the flight operation manuals, and this will just get more and more into the realm of being the norm. And even the transition of the aircraft will become much more automated and digitized, without a shadow of a doubt. There's probably no going back. And now with the environmental pressures around all of us, you're going to see there's going to be a move forward as opposed to moving back.
That is useful. And also, again, from an MRO perspective, what I also understand is there is a lot of adoption in terms of doing all the tick boxes kind of functions through computers these days.
Yes.
Right? There are a lot of MRO software that are coming out. So do you see improvement in efficiency from when you started in this industry and today? Maybe inspections or operations are being done more efficiently, less time being consumed. What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, no, there's been huge gains in that area because the old days of the record room with all the thousands of job cards in it, they are getting less and less, it must be said. And with the mobile applications of laptops and iPads, etc., your sign-offs can be done very much remotely. When you're up in the tail, in particular the tail or the rudder of the aircraft, there's no need to be walking back up and down the ladders anymore, the scaffolding like the old days. There's certainly a move to this formatting, and then the check progress can also be seen while it is in the hangar. Because again, the downtimes are being focused in on, it must be said, a much more lean structure applied to the process of an MRO induction nowadays. Similar is happening with the engines, it must be said, not to forget about the engines, which is equally as big a task to keep an eye on your paperwork, because that's where the money is as well in the asset.
That is really amazing, Martin. That really gives me a perspective, and I'm sure the audience must have also understood how aviation has grown for the last 30 years in terms of efficiencies, right? And of course, in terms of time span in operations getting reduced. But I know that you have other commitments as well, and I would have loved to continue this conversation even further. But let's put it this way: let's schedule another call with you, maybe in some time, and let's get back to this podcast again and have some additional questions with you. Does it make sense?
Perfect sense. And thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Martin, for coming up. To all my audience, so this was Martin signing off, but I'm sure we'll be back again with him with another set of questions from all of you. And of course, as today, it would be even more insightful on the next conversation. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. Take care.
To know more, reach out to us at sales@acumen.aero or support@sparta.aero. We would be happy to assist.